On March 31st, 1990, London prepared for a protest. By midnight, it looked like a city under siege. This was not a foreign attack. It was a domestic decision. The government had introduced a new tax. Every adult would pay the same amount, regardless of income. For many, it felt unequal. For some, it felt deliberate. More than 200,000 people gathered in central London. Police expected noise, banners, speeches. They did not expect fire. Barriers failed first. Then, communication. As tension moved through the crowd, control thinned. Cars were overturned near Trafalgar Square. Shops along Whitehall were smashed. Police units were pushed back. What began as opposition became rupture. And for several hours, the British state could not fully control its own capital. The policy was called the community charge. Most people called it the poll tax. Until then, local taxes were linked to property value. The more valuable the home, the higher the payment. The new system removed that link. A banker in a townhouse and a cleaner in a small flat would pay the same fixed amount. The government argued it was fair. Everyone used public services. Everyone should contribute equally. Critics saw something different. For low-income households, the bill doubled. For students and the unemployed, it felt punitive. Collection required strict enforcement. Non-payment meant court action. Millions refused to register. Local councils struggled to track residents. The reform was meant to increase accountability. Instead, it exposed resentment that had been building for years. By early 1990, opposition was no longer theoretical. It was organized. The demonstration began in the early afternoon. Coaches arrived from across the country. Trade unions, students, pensioners, families. The route was agreed in advance. From Kennington Park to Trafalgar Square. At first, the atmosphere was controlled. Banners, speeches, coordinated chants. Police presence was visible but restrained. Units monitored intersections. Mounted officers waited in reserve. By mid-afternoon, the square was full. Estimates exceeded 200,000. Crowd density changed the dynamic. Movement slowed. Communication thinned. Instructions could not travel through the mass. Small confrontations appeared at the edges. Objects were thrown. Lines tightened. What had been a march became compression, and compression generates force. The first breach occurred near the entrance to Trafalgar Square. A police van was surrounded. Officers inside requested support. Radio traffic intensified. Commands overlapped. Units were redirected without full information. Barriers that were meant to regulate flow became choke points. Pressure built from behind. Those at the front could not retreat. A bottle struck a shield, then another. Mounted officers advanced to clear space. Instead, the movement fragmented the crowd. What had been contained became scattered and volatile. Once police lines separated, coordination weakened. Different groups began acting independently. At that moment, the demonstration ceased to be a single event. It became multiple flashpoints across central London. By early evening, disorder was no longer confined to one square. It spread along the Strand and into surrounding streets. Groups moved without clear direction. Some attempted to leave. Others pushed deeper into the center. Shop windows were broken in sequence. Not coordinated, but repeated. Fires began to appear after dusk. Rubbish bins were set alight. One overturned vehicle burned near Trafalgar Square. Police units shifted from crowd management to containment. Traffic stopped across large sections of Westminster. Buses were diverted. Underground stations closed as a precaution. For residents and shop owners, the shift was immediate. The protest was no longer a gathering. It was disruption. And disruption, once visible, changes how authority is perceived. By the next morning, the images were everywhere. Smoke in Trafalgar Square, Police shields under streetlights, broken glass outside government buildings. Ministers condemned the violence. They insisted the tax would remain. But inside government, the question shifted. Not who started it, but how did it get this far? The poll tax had already been unpopular in Scotland. Now it had become a national test. Local councils warned collection would be difficult. Courts were overwhelmed with non-payment cases. Enforcement looked costly and politically toxic. Support within the Conservative Party began to fracture. MPs received thousands of letters. Constituency offices reported anger they could not ignore. The policy was meant to show firmness. Instead, it exposed vulnerability. And once that vulnerability was televised, it could not be reversed. Television did not need commentary. The footage spoke for itself. Flames reflected against stone facades. Police horses moved through smoke. Crowds scattered under blue lights. For many viewers, the shock was not the scale. It was the location. Trafalgar Square was not an abstract space. It was a symbol of civic order. Now it appeared unstable. International networks replayed the scenes. Newspapers printed front pages of fire and shields. The narrative shifted overnight. This was no longer a debate about taxation. It was a question about authority. Perception moved faster than policy. And once confidence begins to erode in public, restoring it requires more than explanation. In the months that followed, resistance did not fade. Non-payment campaigns expanded across England and Wales. By late 1990, millions had refused to comply. Court summonses accumulated. Administrative costs rose sharply. The tax was becoming harder to defend than to collect. Within the Conservative Party, pressure intensified. Backbench MPs questioned the strategy. Local associations warned of electoral damage. The issue was no longer confined to public order. It threatened political survival. In November 1990, Margaret Thatcher resigned as Prime Minister. The poll tax was formally replaced the following year. The reform that was meant to redefine accountability had instead redefined leadership. Policy had triggered protest. Protest had accelerated change. And once set in motion, that sequence proved irreversible. The events of March 1990 did not destroy the British state. Institutions continued to function. Elections were held. Government changed through procedure. Yet something had shifted. The poll tax riots exposed a limit. Policy can be imposed. Compliance cannot. Authority depends not only on law, but on consent. When a reform is perceived as unjust, enforcement becomes confrontation. What unfolded in central London was not spontaneous collapse. It was accumulated distrust meeting visible power. The lesson was structural, not emotional. Stability requires legitimacy. Legitimacy requires balance. And when balance is ignored, pressure does not disappear. It waits.